Hi, I'm John Fishbein, Senior Program Manager at GFOA, and today we have the pleasure to speak with Judith Marte, who is the Chief Financial Officer of Broward County School District. Judith is also the Vice Chair of the Budget Committee, which I staff along with Matt Bubness, so that's how I got to know Judith. Judith, why don't you tell us a little bit about your organization?
Good morning, John. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak to you about some of the great things going on at the Broward County Public Schools. As you said, my name is Judith Marte. I have the pleasure of serving the community as the Chief Financial Officer for the school district. We are a school district of 270,000 students, sixth largest in the nation, with a general fund budget in excess of $2.7 billion. Nice to be here this morning, John.
Thank you. We have Florida weather today in Chicago. It's going to be warm and then it's going to rain later. Let me ask you, are you back to work yet? What's going on with the Florida schools, particularly in your area?
Sure. So we actually never stopped working. When the shutdown was declared back in mid-March, we were just going into our spring break down here in Florida. So over that week, we quickly transitioned all our operations, including the education of our children, to a virtual environment. So we began immediately working virtually from home and have continued to do so. Effective June 1st, my staff and I, because it's real difficult to try to close the year end and do a budget completely remotely, my leadership team and I have begun to transition back to the office a few days a week. But most of our operations, aside from serving meals to our children, which has been ongoing, and a lot of our building maintenance has been done remotely. But those two operations, serving meals and building maintenance, have been working the entire shutdown period, if you will.
I know my grandson hasn't gone back to school yet. What about the kids down in Florida? When do they expect students to go back to school?
So again, children have finished out their school year in Florida earlier this week, as a matter of fact, and they finished their school year out virtually, so they did complete their school year. We anticipate we will go back to school in some form, yet to be determined, effective mid-August. We also expect to run summer programs for children with special needs and children who are struggling readers in the early grades, and those summer programs will be virtual, John.
Okay, so it's kind of the fall that it's planned to take effect where kids are coming back to school?
So the determination of how children, if you mean come back to school, mean physically come back to school, that has yet to be determined, John. We have a very, very large budget workshop with our school board around the reopening plans slated for June 16th. And being a large, diverse community, we felt it was very important to survey our stakeholders to see what they thought as it related to coming back to school. So we did a survey to all of our parents, all of our students, and all of our staff, 3 separate surveys. We've gathered that data, and basically the outcome is a third. So 1/3 want to come back 100% on premises in the classroom. A third want to stay 100% virtual for the opening of school next year. And a third want a hybrid model, part of the week in school, part of the week home.
When's your fiscal year begin? Is it July 1st?
Yes, sir.
So what's been going on with your budget process, in terms of cutting or adjusting?
Yeah, it's been, so you know me a long time. You and I have known each other, as you said, quite a while. We've done a lot of work together over the years. This is my 32nd year as either a budget professional or a finance officer in a major school district in this country. I have never seen a budget development cycle that mirrors this, not even during the recession. So in Florida, Legislative session ended back in March. Historically, within 7 to 10 days, the budget is given to the governor. He signs it. We know what our revenue is for the year, and off we go developing our final budget plan. This year with COVID, the governor has not yet signed the recommended budget from the legislature, although we have indications that he will sign it the way it was approved by the legislature. So we're going to develop a tentative budget because our statutory budget requirements haven't changed. We have a tentative budget due to the board by July 28th, which will be built on the budget the legislature presented to the governor. All expectations are that there will be a significant mid-year holdback based on the fact that we've had absolutely dire sales tax collections here in Florida because of COVID. We do not have an income tax here in Florida. School districts' budgets are built on property tax and revenue from the state, which is predominantly sales tax. As an example of how dire the situation is, and everybody knows Florida is the happiest place in the world, home of Mickey Land, right?
Yes.
And tourism and the ports, and it's a huge part of our industry. Just for the month of March alone, sales tax collections dropped $770 million, and we collected less than 25% of our normal sales tax. So it's going to be quite a year, John, and we expect actually massive mid-year cuts. Quite honestly, potentially in excess of $100 million.
In terms of decrease, how much have revenues are expected to drop?
So right now, at this point, the state's telling us everything's fine, no revenue drop, you're going to be fine. A little bit of an uptick in your budget, and on you go. Reality is that's not likely to happen. I'm planning for a 10% drop in revenues. And for a school district, that's catastrophic. 10% drop in revenues is in excess of $100 million. The federal government has filled in through the CARES Act already about $45 million of that. So we know the federal government's going to provide school districts with that for next year. We'll talk a little bit later in the discussion about some of the strategies for this year to try to put together some dollars to help offset the problem next year. But there'll still be significant cuts for next year for school districts.
How have you been communicating with your board?
So this on the same day we have the workshop for reopening school, John, we're going to have our third conversation around the budget. So I've had two budget workshops with the board where we've painted different revenue reduction scenarios, got direction from the board as to their priorities. The board's priorities are protecting our classrooms first and foremost, student safety, and mental health. Very unique and very different than municipalities. It's a very different type of budget environment. 85% of our costs are employees. 90% of our costs are direct school support. So changes have tremendous impact on our students. And as you know, Broward County has a specific, very heightened focus on school safety. Several years ago, we had the unfortunate incident in Parkland at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, where we had 17 of our children and staff impacted on campus. So we will not let up on security being a priority for this district, as well as the mental health of our children, which is really important.
If you've got a 10% cut, what are you going to do to balance your budget? Are you going to be cutting expenditures, going into your fund balance? What's the plan?
So I can tell you up front, we won't be going into fund balance. The state of Florida requires us to maintain a minimum of 3% fund balance, or you go into a condition called fiscal urgency, which has a whole host of reporting requirements and approvals by the state, and we don't want to go there. And that's been pretty well communicated from our board to the finance staff. We will, so this year, as we've gone virtual, a lot of year-end events that generally happen were curtailed. So there was a cost avoidance factor, if you would, for this year. Year-end field trips didn't happen. Travel didn't happen. There was overtime avoided. A lot of our hourly staff that were working under 20 hours a week did not get paid. So I estimate we'll have an uptick in our fund balance of about $30 million this year. That money will be used to help offset part of the issue next year. In addition to that, we have made a strong push and we have told all of our stakeholders that we are going to reduce all central office budgets by a minimum of 10%. We also have a strict hiring freeze. Right now we have 134 central office positions, non-school site positions frozen at a value of $12 million. The board has been very clear. The superintendent has been very clear. Everybody's going to have to get the work done next year with significantly lower staffing levels. We also intend to curtail travel. We expect fuel costs to continue to be down. And for a district this large with a $11 million fuel budget, there's significant savings there. Overtime, professional services contracts. We're in the process now of renegotiating contracts with all our major suppliers to get better pricing. Again, we are going to look at a combination of cuts and what we're calling pauses. So, for example, children, once they're in the school next year, if they are actually in the school and not doing the hybrid model that we talked, or blended model that we talked about, the likelihood that children are doing field trips during the first half of the year is very small. So we're calling that a pause. It's not a permanent cut. We can use it to save some money next year with the intent of reinstating field trips once a vaccine comes or the restrictions on movement of people are lifted. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And has your student-teacher ratio, do you anticipate that to change?
No. If anything, we're going to have, so overall, no. But seat time in front of a teacher versus time a teacher has in a hybrid model where part of the time the student's in front of the teacher physically and part of the time the student is in front of a teacher virtually. We won't affect class size, but the actual head count in the classroom, if anything, will be lower because of social distancing requirements, right?
Yeah.
The other thing that we're working through with our amazing transportation department, we transport over 40,000 students. And how do you do social distancing on the bus? Get the kids to school on time. We can't afford more buses. We certainly can't hire more bus drivers. So we're looking at how we make that happen.
But if the kids are learning on a virtual basis, you don't have the bus.
I can quite honestly tell you that all indications are, well, for certainly children with special needs, they will be in school. They will not be virtual. It is very difficult to offer them the complete requirements of their education plan that's required by the government virtually. So they will be in school. It is, again, we have a big workshop with the board on the 16th, but all indications are that it will be a hybrid model. So there will be seat time for our children in the classroom.
Since you're not going into your fund balance, I would imagine that your debt ratings are, staying intact.
Our debt?
Your
yes.
Debt ratings, I'm sure they probably haven't changed since you're not going into your reserves.
No, as a matter of fact, we just issued a few weeks back $250 million of certificates of participation. I think those are unique to school districts, John. Do you want me to tell you a little bit about what they are?
Perhaps in a brief fashion.
Yeah, so certificates of participation are loans against specific school buildings that are unencumbered. So we borrowed $250 million of what we call costs and went to the rating agencies with no changes in our ratings. We don't expect any issues with our ratings.
What about with your capital program? Are you changing anything in that, trying to preserve some cash?
So actually we are not. Several years ago, we went out to our taxpayers for an $800 million general obligation bond to do $1.2 billion worth of renovations and repairs to our school buildings all across the county. The other $400 million came out of our capital millage levy. Fortunately, we've got preliminary indications from the county property values holding steady, and we've got the fund balance in capital. We have the GO bond. We have still $400 million of bonds left to issue. We expect that program to push full steam ahead. Right now, we have no anticipated changes in capital expenditures.
With the rates coming down, any thought about refinancing?
That's what we just did with the $250 million. Other than that, we've got great rates, so we're not looking at any wholesale refinancing.
Well, Judith, I wanted to really thank you for giving us a recap of what's going on in Broward County, and I want to thank you for your time today. And that will wrap up our conversation with Judith. I'm John Fishbein, and I want to thank you for joining us. Have a nice day, Judith.
Thank you very much for having me, John. It was my pleasure.
Goodbye now.